Everyone, welcome to today's lecture. So this is lecture 7 and we're still on quadratic equations, but today we're looking at quadratic equations, and under quadratic equations we'll look at factorization, quadratic formula, and completing the square method. But in this slide we'll just focus on the factorization and using the quadratic formula. And then the next time we're going to meet, we'll look at completing the square method as well as sketching quadratic functions. Alright, so let's quickly look at this. So a quadratic equation is simply just any equation that is in this form. Any equation that takes the form ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0 is called a quadratic equation. And then any equation that takes the form ax squared plus bx plus c, this is a quadratic function. So this one is an equation and it's the one that we're going to focus on. So these equations can be you can find the roots of these equations, rather you can find the answers of these equations by either factorizing or using the quadratic formula or using the completing the square method. So the quadratic formula and the completing the square method are similar, such that the completing the square method is the one that we use to derive the quadratic formula. So let's quickly look at some examples. So the way it is, when you have been given any equation, any quadratic equation, then you discover that it's not factorizable, then you have to use the quadratic formula or the completing the square method. So the quadratic formula and the completing of the square method there are simply just general equations that are used to solve any quadratic equation. So let's quickly move on. Let's look at these examples. So the first one that we have is x squared, which is that one. We have x squared minus x minus 2 is equal to 0. So this equation is simple. Remember, we said a quadratic equation is supposed to take the form ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So this is what we said a quadratic equation is. So meaning, this simply means that if you are to factorize this, you first have to find the product and the sum. So the product, according to mathematics, we know that the product is gotten by multiplying two numbers. When you multiply two numbers, you get the product. When you add two numbers, you get the sum. So when getting the product of this function, you simply just multiply the value of a there and the value of c. So you get the coefficient of x squared and multiply it with the constant there. So the product is found by multiplying a and c to get ac. So this is the product. Then apart from that, you get the sum by just getting the coefficient of x. So the sum is simply just the coefficient of x. And let's quickly now get into serious business we solve. So we find the product. The product is simply just the coefficient of x squared here is 1. We multiply it with negative 2. So we have 1 times negative 2. The answer is simply just negative 2. Then the sum, you just get the coefficient of x there, which is, so the sum is equal to negative 1, which is negative 1 there. Okay. Right, so having found the sum and the product, let us find two numbers such that when we multiply them, they will give us negative 2. When we add them, they will give us negative 1. So we get those two numbers from the product. So you get your product. Our product in this case is negative 2. We find two numbers that we are going to multiply to give us negative 2. We have 1 and negative 2. They will give us negative 2. And then when you also multiply negative 1 times 2, we'll still get negative 2. Let us try to add these numbers. The set of these numbers that will give us negative 1 as the answer is actually the ones that we are going to get as our factors, we also need to find what are called factors. Okay, so when we add 1 plus negative 2, the answer will just be, so when we add 1 plus negative 2, the answer is negative 1. When we add negative 1 plus 2, the answer is 1. So the one which gives us negative 1, the one which gives us the sum, in short, is the one that we get. So we'll get this set of numbers because it's the one that is giving us the sum of negative 1. So we can now begin to factorize. So we have, okay, let me start from there. So we have x squared as our equation minus x minus 2 is equal to 0. So while is negative 1, we're going to replace with these two numbers, positive 1 and negative 2. So we have x squared, positive 1 is just the same as positive x, negative 2 is just the same as negative 2x, then we say negative 2 there is equal to 0. Okay, let me just go back to what okay, so that is exactly what you're supposed to do. Then apart from that, we can now factorize. So we're using the factorization method, by the way. So we can now factorize. So the common factor between these two first terms, this one, and this one, the common factor is just x. So x is common. Then we open brackets. So when we factorize x from x squared, we remain with x. Then we say plus. And then when we factorize x from x, we remain with 1. So this should be such that if I multiply x times x, I'll get x squared. X times 1, I'll get x there. And then the common factor between negative 2x and negative 2 will simply just be negative 2. So negative 2 is common. So when you factorize negative 2 from negative 2x, you just remain with x. And then when you factorize negative 2 from negative 2, you get positive 1. Then you say this is equal to 0. Right, so from there, we can now check. You check and ensure that whatever that is there is exactly the same that is there. If they are different, it means that you have made a mistake somewhere. So we can pick the factor there, the common factor, which is x plus 1. We write it there. Then open brackets, we write the remaining part x and negative 2 in another set of brackets. We write x and negative 2 there. Then say this is equal to 0. Yeah, so from there, okay, so here we are solving this quadratic equation using the factorization method. So here we've managed to factorize. Let us now equate each of these factors to 0. So the first factor that we have is x plus 1. We equate this to 0. The second one is this part, which is x minus 2. We also equate it to 0. We take this x to the other side of the equal sign. We have x is equal to negative 1. Then we take this negative 2 to the other side of the equal sign. We have x is equal to 2. So these are the solution. These are the solutions for this quadratic equation there. So let's quickly move on to this one here. Okay, so we have this one here. So even this one, we do the same. We first find the product, the sum, and the factors. So the product is simply found by multiplying the coefficient of x squared and the constant there. So the product in this case will just be 6 times negative 10. So when you multiply 6 and negative 10, we're getting negative 60. Then the sum is simply just negative 11. We just get the coefficient of x. So we find two numbers that we're going to multiply to give us negative 60. Then when we add them, they'll give us negative 11. So those numbers will be found by getting the product, which is negative 60. And then we try some numbers. So we have negative 60. Let us try some numbers. So we have 1 times negative 60. When we multiply these two, we'll get negative 60 as the answer. Then we also have negative 1 times 60 will also give us negative 60. Then we also have 2 times 30, 2 times negative 30 will give us negative 60. Then we also have negative 2 times 30 to also give us negative 60. Then we also have 3 times negative 20. This will give us negative 60. We also have negative 3 times 20 to also give us 60. We also have 4 times negative 15. This will give us 50. And then we also have negative 4, sorry, to give us negative 60. And then we also have negative 4 times 15 to also give us negative 60. And then we also have 5 times 12. We have 5 times 12. 5 times negative 12. Then we also have negative 12 times 5. Alright, let's try to add all these numbers. We see which one will give us the sum negative 11. So the one that will give us negative 11 is the set of numbers that will give us negative 11 is the set that we're looking for as our factors. So 1 times negative, 1 plus negative 60, this will give us negative 59. Then this one will give us 1 plus 60 to give us 59. 2 plus negative 30 to give us negative 28. Negative 2 plus 30, this will give us 28. 3 plus negative 20, this will give us negative 17. Negative 3 plus 20, this will give us so negative 3 plus 20, this will give us 17. And then 4 plus negative 15, so 4 plus negative 15, this will just give us negative 11. So we have found the two sets, the one that has given us negative 11. There's no need of us even proceeding going down. There's no probability of us finding the next set again. This is the only set. So after addition, this is what you get. So now the sum, sorry, the factors are simply just 4 and negative 15. They're the ones that have given us negative 11. 4 and negative 11. Oh, sorry, 4 and negative 15. So we get this equation. Have 6x squared minus 11x, then minus 10 is equal to 0. So while there is negative 11, we'll replace that with those factors. So we have negative 6x, sorry, to be positive 6x, not negative. So we have 6x squared, then there we'll put positive 4, then x, then we also have negative 15x minus 10 is equal to 0. So what we just do here is we factorize. We find the common factor between these first two sets and the other two sets. So the common factor is simply just 2x on the first two sets. We have 2x as the common factor. So 2x into 6x squared, that is just 3x. Then 2x into 4x will give us 2. Then we say negative is common. Negative, we have negative there, we also have negative there, so it's common. And then the other thing that is common there is 5. 5 can go into 15, 5 can also go into 10. So 5 into negative 5 into negative 15, the answer is simply just 3x. Negative 5 into negative 15x, the answer is 3x. Negative 5 into negative 10, the answer is positive 2. Is equal to 0. So remember to check here. Ensure that what is there and there are the same. If they are different, it means that you've made a mistake somewhere. So we can write the common factor, which is 3x plus 2. Then in brackets, we open brackets, we write the remaining factor outside. So we have 2x and negative 5 outside. So this is equal to 0. So from there, we can now equate each of these two factors to 0. So we have 3x plus 2 is equal to 0. We also equate 2x minus 5 to 0. So when you equate this factor to 0, we're going to have 3x is equal to negative 2. This side you're going to have, this one will go to the other side, you have 2x is equal to 5. Then here when we divide by 3, the value of x will just remain negative 2 over 3. Then this side, when you divide by 2, the value of x remains 5 over 2. So this is how simple factorization is. Yeah, so let us solve the next question as well. So the next question is this one, which is the third question on those examples that we had. So this one is already factorized to some extent. Actually, they were using completing the square method. So we just have to finish and find the answer. So the first thing that we need to do is to introduce the square root on both sides to get rid of this square. So how do we do that? Simple. We have x minus 1 over 3 in brackets squared is equal to 25 over 9. So when we find the square root of this side, even this side, make sure that this side you add plus or minus. So the square root of the first part this side will just give us x minus 1 over 3. Then the other part this side, square root of 25 will simply just be 5 over square root of 9. This will just be 3. So we hence take this to the other side of the equal sign. We're going to have x is equal to, when this goes to the other side of the equal sign to become positive 1 over 3, then we have this plus or minus there, then 5 over 3. So 5 over 3. So the first value of x that we're going to have will be 1 over 3. 1 over 3, we just write it properly. So we have 1 over 3 plus 5 over 3. The other set of values of x that we're going to, the other value of x that we're going to have is x is equal to 1 over 3. This time around to put a minus there, 5 over 3. So x is equal to 1 over 3 plus 5 over 3. Since the denominators are the same, you just add the numerator. So when you add the numerator, we have 6 over 3. The answer is just 2. Here, even this part, since the denominator is just the same, so we subtract the numerators. 1 minus 5 will give us negative 4 over 3. So the value of x is either 2 or negative 4 over 3. These are the two values of x that are needed. Alright, let's quickly move on to the next one. So we start now looking at the quadratic formula. So the in the next session, when we begin to look at the completing the square method, I'll show you how to derive this using the completing of the square method. So this formula here is the one that is called the quadratic formula. So I'm going to show you how to derive this when you look at completing the square. So for now, you just have to master it. Okay, so let us use the quadratic formula to solve this equation. So we know to say the quadratic formula is simply just x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, everything divided by 2n. So the first thing that we need to identify in this equation is the value of a, b, and c. So we know that the general formula of the quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So the coefficient of x squared is always a, the coefficient of x is b, and we have the constant 2, which is c. So we replace them in or before we replace them in, let me just write them. So the value of A in this case, when you compare the first part there and add, simply just 1. The value of B is simply just 4. B is equal to 4. And then the value of C is simply just 2 there. Oh, sorry, I've written C twice. Okay, so the value of C is simply just 2. So we replace them in the formula. We have x is equal to negative b will be negative 4 plus or minus the square root of b squared is simply just be 4 squared, then minus 4, and then our value of a is simply just 1, 4a, and then c will simply just be 2, and everything divided by 2, a is simply just 1. And we have x is equal to negative 4 plus or minus, we simplify what is in the under the square root there. 4 squared is simply just 16 minus 4 times 2, that is 8. Then everything divided by 2. Okay. So we simplify this. We're going to have x is equal to negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 minus 8 is simply just 8. Then everything divided by 2. So x can also be written as negative 4 plus or minus 8 can also be written, the root of 8 can also be written as the root of 2 times 4. So this can also be written as the root of 2. Okay, let me just write it properly so that you see what I want to achieve. Okay, I'll write it down here, but I'm going to erase. Okay, so the root of 8 can also be written as the root of 2 times 4. The root of 2 times 4 can also be written as the root of 2 times the root of 4. So the root of 4 is simply just 2. Then times that, we just have 2 root 2. So the root of 8 can also be written as 2 root 2. So while there is the root of 8, we can put 2 root 2. Okay, so I'm going to put 2 root 2 there. So we put 2 root 2 there. Then everything divided by 2. So we can divide 2 into 4 there. We have x is equal to 2 into negative 4. That's negative 2. Then we have plus or minus 2 into 2. That's the root of 2. So the first value of x will simply just be negative 2 plus the root of 2. Then the second value of x will simply just be negative 2 minus the root of 2. So these are the two values of x that you find using, we have found using the quadratic formula. Let's quickly move on to the next question. The next question is this one. So we have 2x squared plus 3x minus 6. So the first thing is we identify our a. So our a in this case, the coefficient of x squared, which is 2. Our b is the coefficient of x, which is 3. Then our c is negative 6. So we say x is equal to negative b plus or minus the root of b squared minus 4ac. Then everything divided by 2a. So the value of x will simply just be equal to negative b will simply just be negative 3. Then we have plus or minus, okay, we have plus or minus the square root of the square root of b squared. So b squared is simply just 3 squared minus 4. My a is 2. So let me write this properly. My a is 2, and then c is simply negative 6. Then everything divided by 2a. So a is 2. Then from there we can simplify the expression. Plus or minus the square root of 3 squared is simply 9. Then negative 4 times negative 6, that is 24. 24 times 2, that's 48. So I have plus 48. Then everything divided by 2 times 2, that is 4. So we simplify this, we're going to have 9 plus 48. This will give us something like 57. Yeah, so this will give us 57. So we have x is equal to negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 57, then over everything divided by 4. So the first value of x is simply just negative 3 plus root of 57 over 4. Then the second value of x is simply just negative 3 minus the root of 57 over 4. So these are the two values of x that are needed. Alright, so let's quickly move on to the other. Oh, that's the end of the lecture slide. Alright, so thank you very much for attending tonight's lesson. So the most important thing that you need to know on the quadratic formula is simply just the formula itself. Just know the formula itself, and then on the on the factorization method, the most important thing that you need to know is how to find the factors and how to replace them there. So that's the most important thing that you need to do. Just know how to find the factors on factorization, and just know how to just master the formula in short on the formula method, and you should know which one is your A, B, and your C, and you always be getting the solutions correct. So thank you very much for watching tonight's lesson. See you in the next lesson that we're going to have. Shalom, shalom.